Hi everybody and welcome to our virtual cooking class this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give it another minute or so to let everybody who has registered join the class. If you haven't already, you want to make sure that your oven is preheating. Mine just dinged, so I know it's good. You want it preheating to 375, so if you don't have that going already, go ahead and set that. And we're gonna, by the time we get our cheesy potatoes ready to go in the oven, it should be preheated by then, but get that preheating. I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands as well while we're waiting for everybody else to get on the class today. So if you haven't done that, good idea just to quick wash your hands before we get cooking. Okay, I think we are good to get started. So hello everybody and welcome to our virtual cooking class today. I'm Mealtime Mentor and Registered Dietitian Lauren, and I'm so excited to be joining you today from the Festival Foods Test Kitchen. Hopefully you are all set and ready to cook with me in your kitchen. This class has us gearing up for the holidays, which I can't believe Thanksgiving is already next week. We want to thank Oikos for sponsoring our class today, and hope you're all ready to get cooking a really great holiday recipe. Just a couple housekeeping notes quickly before we jump into the recipe. Each of your microphones will remain muted throughout the class today. However, if you do have any questions throughout the class, please feel free to use the Q&A function. It's a little button at the bottom of your screen. Please use that instead of the chat function. That just allows us to better track questions and make sure all your questions get answered. Today we have Mealtime Mentors Casey and Jenny on the chat, and they will be answering your questions throughout the class. If you're taking this class on demand and do have questions, please reach out to us at askfestivaldietitians.com. All right, so let's get started. Today we are making cheesy potatoes, which I don't know about you and your family, but definitely a holiday favorite in my family, and really who doesn't love cheesy potatoes. And what's special about this recipe today, obviously we're working with Oikos. We're using plain non-fat Greek yogurt, which is a really great ingredient in this recipe and really a great ingredient for the entire holiday season. But this recipe is definitely a lightened up version of your traditional cheesy potatoes and does incorporate some extra veggies. So let's get started cooking, and I'll explain more along the way. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, our oven's preheating. That'll be ready for us. We're going to go ahead and chop up some of our veggies. So we have a yellow onion today. So you just want to take your onion. I haven't peeled mine or anything. I'm going to go and cut off the end here. I'm using a chef's knife, so this is your larger knife. You want to make sure your knife is nice and sharp. A dull knife is actually more of a cooking hazard than using a sharp knife. So you want to make sure that knife is nice and sharp. And once you cut off the end, you should hopefully be able to peel your onion pretty well. It'll hopefully start to give you a little bit of a place to peel off that outer layer. You can discard the end there. And then what I'm going to do is, now I have a flat surface for my onion, I'm going to go ahead and cut my onion in half. Just choose a side that you want to cut down. I don't cut right down this stem. I cut on one side or the other. Cut straight down so you have two nice halves. Each one has a flat side. You want to turn them over again on their larger flat side. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to make slits into my onion. I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm making slits. And again, it should all stay nice and together. And then from there, and I'm just going to turn my onion 180 degrees. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the other way. And this is just an easy way to chop an onion. And maybe you have a different way that you prefer. That's totally fine. This is just what I do and what works for me. I love that it just keeps the onion together. It just keeps it a little bit cleaner and easier to manage. And then once you get to the end, just go ahead and chop away. Go ahead and do that to the other half of my onion here. We're using the entire onion, which is super flavorful in this recipe. This is where that sharp knife comes in handy. You shouldn't have to use too much effort to get right through your onion. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and discard the stem there. I'm going to push that to the side of my cutting board. And then I'm going to go ahead and chop up our garlic while we're here. 3 cloves of garlic. I have 2 really like jumbo pieces, or cloves I should say, so that's what I'm using today. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the stem. And honestly, you know, I'm not like a seasoned chef, but my best tip for garlic is just keep chopping away. Eventually it gets smaller and smaller and smaller into those desirable pieces that we're looking for. So break it up and then go ahead and just go to town. When you get into a little bit more manageable pieces, a good tip is just to keep the tip of your knife on the cutting board and just rock back and forth with that garlic. Just keep corralling it because some start to escape. Just keep chopping away. So like I mentioned today, this recipe is a little bit more lightened up than your traditional cheesy potatoes, but I promise you it does not lack any of the flavor. So we're using this whole onion here. We're using a couple cloves of garlic. Of course, feel free to adjust. If you're like, oh, I love garlic, I love onion, feel free to add more, add less. And then our next ingredient that we're going to be adding, like I mentioned, we're adding in some veggies. So we're actually going to shred up some carrots, and we're going to add those to our cheesy potatoes, which add some great color, add some nice texture, a little bit of sweetness, because we are going to cook them. And really, you don't really taste them too much, but it's a great way to add some veggies. So my garlic is just about good here. I'm going to give it one more chop. And then what we're going to do is that we're actually going to move over to our skillet. So you just need a large skillet today. Going to add, you can use canola oil, you can use olive oil, about a tablespoon of oil to our skillet. Gonna get it going here. Turn it on, medium high. Is it lit? Yep. And just get that oil preheating. Should only take a minute or so. You'll know when it's nice and hot and moving all around the pan. And then we're gonna go ahead and add these two to that. So in the meantime, what you can get ready is grab your couple carrots. I have found that it's about 2 to 3 carrots is what we need to shred up to yield about a cup, which is what the recipe calls for. So then you're also going to need a grater of some sort. All right, this oil looks good over here, so I'm going to go ahead and add my onion. Actually going to add our onion first, let that cook a little bit, and then we'll add our garlic shortly after. So you just might want to spread it around nicely in here, and then we can just kind of leave that be and let it cook a little bit while we work on our carrots. All right, so grab your grater. I've washed these carrots. I didn't peel them. That's optional since I am going to be grating it. Go ahead and find the size that you'd like for your carrots in the recipe. And then this is your arm workout for the day. Just keep going to town. Getting these nice and shred. And these are actually going to go right into our pan as well. That one's about done. See how far you can go. So some of the other ingredients you probably noticed on the recipe today, we're using Oikos plain non-fat Greek yogurt, which for me is really a staple just all year round. I always have it in my fridge for smoothies, for topping chili and other soups or tacos, for sour cream. For baking, I use it a ton in baking different muffin and bread recipes. And for the holidays, you can use it for all those things as well. Especially in dishes like this that would typically use like a sour cream or would use more butter. It's an awesome substitute. A little bit lighter, but also it gives a really great like tangy flavor to a lot of these different recipes. When I said like this is a workout, it seriously is. You gotta keep going. Get that carrot shred up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm gonna take a peek at about how much I have here. I think as long as I just finish this carrot, we should be good. That should be about a cup. And you can add up. I'm not going to measure it. To me, that looks like almost a cup, so I am going to be happy with that. All right. Our onion smells good. It's getting nice and fragrant, which is awesome. And I am good with our amount of carrots here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw away the ends. I'm going to put this one over the side. We don't need it. Take a peek at our onion. Looks good. Going to go ahead and add our garlic. We'll just give our garlic a minute in here to think about itself with the onion before we add the carrot. Again, we're just looking for the garlic to get nice and fragrant. But that's looking good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add our carrots here. I'm going to give it a nice little mix. And when you feel like it's incorporated, you can go ahead and turn the heat down to low, and then hopefully you have the cover to your skillet handy. We're going to cover this and let it cook for about 5 to 10 minutes, really just until your carrots are soft. Now, if you used matchstick carrots in this recipe, if you're like, I don't want to worry about shredding them, that is definitely an option. In that case, because they'd be a little bit thicker than what we shred up today, it probably would take a little closer to 10 minutes. I think this will probably only take about 5. So I'm going to, because we used our grater and made them pretty thin, we just really want them to be soft so we're not putting crunchy carrots into our potatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that and let that cook for about 10 minutes or so. So what we're going to do next is we're going to grab our casserole dish. We need to give it a nice spray. Make sure that's ready to go. When our carrots are nice and softened, we're going to add in our hash browns. So I'm going to actually move these over here. Incorporate that. That's going to go right into our casserole dish over here. And then from there, we're going to make our sauce. And actually, we're going to use this same skillet to make our sauce. We're going to make a roux today, which incorporates butter, some chicken broth, non-fat milk, and then our yogurt. And that is going to be our mixture then that we pop into the oven. So while we're waiting for that to cook, we can talk a little bit more about plain non-fat Greek yogurt. I know I talked about some of the things that I use it for this time of year, but just a couple other substitutions that maybe you haven't thought about. Mayos and salads and dressings around the holiday season with that salad. That's a great way to swap in yogurt again. And what's great is you can use that 1-to-1 ratio when you're substituting. We talked about sour cream in dips, which I think dips are a total staple during the holidays. Another thing too is if you're like, I don't know if I want to add all just Greek yogurt, you could do half Greek yogurt, half sour cream, just incorporate it in a little bit. And what's nice is if you stock up on these 32-ounce tubs, you have it for all these different types of recipes, which is really nice. So I'm going to take a peek over here. Again, you can kind of stir throughout. For time's sake today, I'm actually pretty happy with this. Our carrots are very tender because we did shred them so finely. If you want to let yours go a little bit longer, feel free. I don't think you're going to get lost based on what we're going to do next. So I'm going to turn off my skillet. I'm going to add in our, actually I don't think I wanted to turn it off yet, but add in your shredded hash browns, about 5 cups, which is what this bag is that I'm using today. If you're using frozen, you can use frozen. It's going to take you a little bit longer to get them nice and tender in your skillet. Otherwise, just feel free to take them out of the freezer next time ahead of time. Let them thaw so you have thawed hash browns that you're using. All right, so I have that in there. We are going to cook these, so I need to turn this back on. My bad there. And then I'm going to add in some salt and pepper to taste. And again, we're just looking to warm these up a little bit. If you are using frozen, it's going to take you a little longer. I pulled mine out of the fridge a little while ago, so mine are not super cold. And this is a good time to just incorporate our onion, our garlic, carrots, all with our beautiful hash browns, and then season them up to taste. All right. Sometimes those carrots can kind of like clump up a little bit because we shred them so finely, so you just want to make sure that they're evenly incorporated. Okay, now I'm going to turn it off. We've greased our casserole dish over here, our 9x13. I'm going to go ahead and add this entire mixture right to our casserole dish. Get it all in there. Try to clean this out as much as possible because we are going to use this same skillet for our sauce. Now you could use like a saucepan. I just, no matter what I'm making, try to minimize dishes. So this will be just fine to use for our sauce. And hey, it minimizes one dish. All right. Go ahead and spread that evenly. And we can move back over here. So our skillet, we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of butter. You can turn it back on to about medium. 2 tablespoons of butter is all this recipe calls for, which is crazy. And I'll just wait for that to melt. Grab a whisk here. You want to use a whisk because this is where we're making that roux, where we're adding in 2 tablespoons of butter. We're then going to add in our 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And then our liquids. Going to make that really easy sauce. Side dishes are probably my favorite part of any holiday meal. I definitely prefer them over the main courses. And there's so many different types of potatoes to make around the holidays. We have so many options, too, on our meal ideas site. Everything from scalloped cheesy potatoes to croquettes. So many different potato options. Sweet potato options, which I'm a huge fan of. All right, so that's nice and melted. You're going to grab your all-purpose flour, add in about 2 tablespoons. Have the skillet on medium right now. You don't want it too hot because we don't want to burn this. Go ahead and give that a whisk until it's just toasted. You'll see it's kind of more of like a tan color. We don't want it to get too brown before adding in our liquid. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add in our chicken broth. We're using a reduced sodium. You want to add in a little bit and then give it a whisk to incorporate. Just slowly adding it in. I think that's what the recipe notes. We don't want to add it all in at once. Be kind of delicate. We don't want our flour to clump up quite too much. Add the rest of that. So about a cup of our chicken broth. Incorporate that. We can move on to our milk. So a 1.5 cups of skim milk or non-fat milk or whatever you have in your fridge, honestly, will work just fine. Give it a whisk, nice and slow. Roux just requires some patience. And then once all your liquid is added in, give it a nice whisk. Just just until everything's incorporated. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn up my heat a little bit. And we're just going to let this cook until it thickens. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and add in our Greek yogurt. And then some cheese. I'm going to move that over as well. And that is our sauce. So it's a very, very simple option. So you can keep kind of whisking this throughout. This is a time if I were at home, I would probably start doing some dishes and cleaning up a little bit while you're just kind of waiting for this to, it should start to thicken up. It's not going to get super thick, but because we're adding that Greek yogurt and the cheese, it really thickens up from there. So if you're thinking, okay, mine is still very liquidy, that is A-okay, because we're going to be adding in those other ingredients. So a couple of modifications for this recipe. If you're hosting somebody or somebody in your family, or maybe yourself needs to eat gluten-free, you can just simply use gluten-free all-purpose flour. Instead of the bran flakes that we're going to be using today to top, you would just use corn flakes. Those would be a gluten-free option, so really easy to make this recipe gluten-free. Another just quick holiday hack is that you could assemble this recipe ahead of time and wait to bake it until the day of with the bran flakes. So essentially up until the sauce point, you would just put it in the fridge, and then the day of is when you would go ahead and bake it and add the bran flakes, and they'll be really nice and crispy. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and get our Greek yogurt and our cheese in there. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper as well. It's a good time to do that. So our Greek yogurt, we're using the 6 ounces, which is equivalent to about 3/4 cup. And again, this is something that you don't have to be super precise on. And get that in. And then we're using just a mild cheddar. You could use a sharp cheddar. I just have the already shredded, and that seemed to melt fine when I've made this before. You could shred your own if you prefer. Completely up to you. That Greek yogurt in there. And then we're going to add about 1.5 cups of the cheese. So this bag is 2 cups. So I'm just going to leave about 1/2 cup to add at the end. So you can go ahead and whisk this up. At this point, you can turn off the heat. Everything should be pretty hot in there, just enough to melt the cheese. Just whisk it all up. So you see here where I was saying before, if it looks really liquidy, it gets thick very quickly, thanks to those other 2 ingredients. Just need to make sure all that cheese is melted. Mine looks really good. So now I'm going to move over, and I'm going to just pour this over the top of our hash brown mixture from earlier. About every last drop. This is the good stuff right here. The sauce. This out of the way. And then I'm just going to use my wooden spoon here to incorporate the sauce throughout. So you're essentially just using this as your mixing bowl. Again, saving the dishes. But just making sure all of your hash browns potatoes are completely coated and just evenly distributed throughout the pan. So what you would do from here, and what you are going to do, I already did this for time's sake. Your oven's preheating to 375. You would pop this in the oven once you have it completely incorporated for about 20 to 25 minutes. Essentially, we just want everything to get nice and hot. And then you would take it out of the oven. So this looks good. I am going to pop this in the oven. You can go ahead and do the same. And this is mine that's done. It's cool enough. So I'm gonna bring that over here. And then for our last step, so this cooked, it's nice and heated through. We have our bran flakes, so it's about two-thirds cup bran flakes. Feel free to modify, but I just put them in a plastic bag, and you need to go on ahead and crush them up. It's a great job for any kids in your family or yourself. It's honestly just very satisfying. Go ahead and crush. I don't think I mentioned, and I didn't do that there, we had some remaining cheese. You want to sprinkle that over the top of your mixer before you pop it in the oven. Like, this is looking very cheesy, that's why. All right, so you can go ahead, top with bran flakes, and then you want to have your cooking spray handy because you're going to spray your bran flakes with some cooking spray. This will just help them brown up a little bit. That looks pretty good. So grab your cooking spray, and then you would turn your oven on broil, and you would broil just under the broiler on high or low, I'm sorry, for about 1 to 2 minutes. Essentially, we just want everything to get nice and brown and bubbly and get a really nice crunchy topping, which is so delicious. So I'll let you go ahead and finish that up. I'm gonna get this in our oven here so we can enjoy it. But just want to thank you so much for joining our class today. We hope you had fun. Hope you learned a couple of tips and tricks along the way. If you're taking this class live, you will be receiving a post-class survey to the email that you provided at registration. We'd greatly appreciate if you would take that survey, give us some feedback on what you thought about the class, what you'd like to see for upcoming classes. And as a thank you, we'll be picking one survey responder to win a $25 Festival Foods gift card. To register for upcoming classes, take previous classes on demand, get all the materials you need for both. Visit festfoods.com/classes. That's really our hub for all things virtual cooking classes. Also be sure to follow Fest Foods on Facebook and Instagram to be the first to hear about our upcoming virtual cooking classes. And you can also find more holiday recipes specifically from our mealtime mentors at festfoods.com/meals. Happy holidays, and we will see you next time. Bye.